Welcome for the twofer edition of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. Yes, there are actually two podcasts that happen in one day. Is that possible? Well, apparently it is. If you're watching here live on social media, make sure to subscribe, share, like, and comment. Our guest is a top LinkedIn expert, so you got to make sure and say some words, maybe make some comments. And I'm looking for my 1,000th subscriber to my YouTube channel. I'm only about 30 or 40 away. So if you could actually go there and ring the bell, that would actually do me a favor. You might be my 1,000th subscriber to my YouTube channel. Meanwhile, if you want all the episodes of Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online. See all the 15 beautiful spots you can subscribe to your podcast and get a new podcast every Wednesday. In addition to that, if you want to learn how to be more engaging in the world, well, you should listen to this podcast. And you could also turn on your camera, scan the QR code, come to my retreat. I give free tickets to this because I really want this information to be accessible. It's called the Engaging Retreat every October. It's in its 7th year. This year will be hybrid, October 20 through 22nd here in Seattle and live online. Now, speaking of being online, my guest is online a lot. When we last visited in February 2024, we had a blast. She's a facilitator and trainer who has spent thousands of hours on Zoom. She's at least got to be in that 10,000 hour range. She's on a mission to help professionals design and lead exceptional online sessions that get better results for groups. I have seen lots of her comments, and I think I've experienced more than one of her virtual meetings. She is a top facilitation voice on LinkedIn, and she is part of a bicultural family. I'm so excited to reintroduce to you the one and only Gwyn Wansbrough. Welcome. There you go. Hi, Gwyn. How you doing?
Wow, John, that was amazing. I'm feeling like all of this energy coming through from Seattle all the way to Toronto. Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We've been talking around the MC communities recently, and that energy, though, is a thing that an MC really needs to bring to programs. And it's fun to see that everyone's different interpretation of what that means.
Absolutely. Well, I'm feeling your energy. It's coming straight through. So thanks for that.
Excellent. So now let's talk about too. Since I last saw you, you moved from Barcelona or Barcelona, right? If you're saying it locally, to Toronto, and I'm curious, what spurred that move?
Yeah, well, we had been living in Barcelona, beautiful Barcelona, for 10 years with our kids, and they went to school in Barcelona. And then they both decided to come back to Canada to study at university.
Oh,
So all of a sudden, our kind of center of gravity shifted. And I'm originally from Toronto. My family is based here, including my 90-year-old father. So
oh.
there were lots of reasons to come back. And the great thing about virtual work is that you can bring everything with you. You can do this work from wherever you are in the world, pretty much. So that part made the move easy to come back. But that's kind of that was the main driver.
Well, you'll love. I just came from TEDx Portland, and the theme was homecoming, and they went so far as they actually put a home on stage, and they built like a backyard gate, and that's how speakers entered and exited the stage was like coming into your backyard.
That's awesome.
That's crazy. Well, let's do this. So let's take a moment too, Gwen. You can update us too. A few of my friends don't know who you are, so why don't you just take this moment to share who you are, what you're doing, and of course, what has been up in the last 2 years.
Yeah, great. So my name is Gwyn Wansbrough, and I am a virtual trainer and I call myself an online engagement specialist. And this is one of those things, John, that I'm sure you can appreciate didn't even exist, just a few years ago. But my whole mission is to help people design and deliver highly engaging virtual experiences that bring the joy back into working and learning online. So I know we've got you and I are virtual engagement, fanatics. I know that's one thing we have in common is that we both deeply believe in the value of virtual meetings, of virtual conferences, of virtual training, virtual courses. Um, and, I hear a lot of people saying things like, oh, you can't do that on Zoom. And, oh, it's just not the same. It isn't the same. But that's the interesting part. And
Right.
it's where you can really understand where it is not the same that you can then design and lead a really exceptional virtual experience. So yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
So, one part, well, I do want to remind me the genesis too of how you got into virtual, right? Because I tried 38 years ago, like I was interested in it and nobody would buy it, right? Until March of 2020, then almost everybody was suddenly interested. So, like, you're right, the market didn't exist. It's kind of like AI, like things didn't exist, 5 or 10 years ago, and now they exist. So, I'm just curious, what was the path to you really focusing on virtual?
So I was leading a in-person facilitation training organization, and it was a global organization. I worked with some of the most exceptional facilitators out there. I was so fortunate to have that kind of experience. I was with this organization for 10 years. We organized trainings, all over the world, in India, in Brazil, in Egypt, in the UK, in the United States, um, teaching people how to make learning experiences more dynamic and creative and engaging. We did a lot of work with teachers, how to get kids engaged in the learning experience. And I had just stepped down from that organization, not knowing that COVID was coming.
Right.
Um,
None of us
and
knew. Right.
and none of us knew. And then COVID hit. So all
Mhm.
my plans I really loved the facilitation piece of what I was doing. So that's what I was focused on continuing. And I had my first, independent gig in Madrid because I was living in Spain at the time that suddenly became a virtual training. And I
Right.
thought, I told the organizers, I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know anything about leading an online session. They said, let's just do it anyway. And we'll just figure it out as we go. I was so, and it was literally because that her name is Mammon said that and was totally open to, how can we make this work in a virtual setting that we started experimenting. I led my first virtual session and with all of the apprehensions because when we were doing as I'm sure you can appreciate when we were doing the in-person training every once in a while we'd say we should probably try an online version of this and then we'd say nah, it's not the same. You can't do online what you can do in person, so we never really got around to doing it.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden myself and like a lot of people, we were just thrust into it. So that was and in that first session, we had been in lockdown in Spain. People couldn't leave their homes. It was like a really tight lockdown in Spain because the situation was quite um, scary as it was in lots of part of the world. But Spain in particular, I don't know if you remember, was a country that was really having a struggle trying to keep try to contain the virus.
Hmm.
So people were feeling, and Spanish people in general are very, they love being in person, they love being
Right.
in large groups, they
Yes.
love being with their families. And so that even was like an additional layer of feeling really lonely and isolated, during the pandemic, as was the experience of a lot of people.
Hmm.
So in that first session, I just remember thinking, I don't know if any of this is landing. I don't know if, what is going on. And at the very end of the workshop, I just asked, just one word, how are you feeling at the end of this workshop? And the responses started cascading through the chat, and
Hmm.
it was energized and inspired and
Oh.
connected and
Oh.
accompanied and, all these kinds of things. And it honestly brought like goosebumps, just especially the contrast to the experience that people were having. And anyway, at that moment, I thought, oh my gosh, it is possible to have these meaningful learning experiences online. And so that just spun me into what is now a 6 year deep dive into all things what makes for an engaging virtual session. And so 6 years later, here I am. There's still things that I am learning on a daily basis when it comes to what makes for a really truly engaging and meaningful, virtual session.
Yeah, I think that's the key part too, is that because it is still so new, I still think many of us are pioneering. Why we have best practices, we have definitely some indicators of which way to go, and I don't think any of us know the full breadth of what's possible.
I think that's what makes it so exciting
Yeah.
because
Oh, yeah.
we
Yeah. You're just
we
we're just
don't.
This is like Lewis and Clark, like they were blazing, or whatever you want to call it. Like somebody was blazing trail, right? We're just blazing down some digital trail and trying to figure out what could be done. So that's actually, I think, a great segue too. You created a scorecard, so I think you now have either a rubric or you have an idea of some of the things. So I'm kind of curious. First, tell me how you came up with a scorecard, and then we can share some results or how it works.
Yeah. Well, this is something I'm really excited about actually, because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day who leads a big bank here in Canada.
Hmm.
And he was talking, he's kind of my age. He went through in-person training when he was like a young guy in the bank. And he was really lamenting the fact that like all these young people now, like all the training is virtual and you just don't have that same kind of experience. And I would agree, you don't have the same it wouldn't be the same as,
Yeah.
what he experienced.
Yes.
But he said, there's kind of like this thing that I feel like is kind of like a Zoom fallacy, where you have these training programs that have switched online. You think you're accessing more people. I mean, you talk about it in your book, which was one of the first books that I ever saw on engaging virtual meetings. And I
Wow.
was just leafing through it again today. I was like, oh my gosh, it's very comprehensive and still totally relevant.
Thank
And
you
in
for
your book, you say, the virtual meetings take less time, they cost less,
that.
they're less impact on the environment, and still we're not, it's not sticking, it's not engaging people. And so you can think that just because we have this possibility of doing things online now,
Oh,
we're able to reach that many more people. Well, that's the Zoom fallacy that this friend of mine was talking about. And so that in part led me to start to think, you know what? I think we've got 6 years now, you've got more years of experience in the virtual, engagement space, but, 6 years since this massive switch
yes.
to online and virtual, where no one really, there was a lot of figuring it out as we went along. There was a lot of winging it. And there's still a lot of there's still a lot of winging it. I think we figured some things out. People are a little bit more, quite a bit more tuned into what makes for a virtual experience. But it led me to think like there are actually things that we know make a really engaging virtual experience, and it's just that, and knowing what those things are and being aware of what they are, and even having the possibility of scoring yourself or assessing yourself
Yes.
on these different elements would be really helpful. I would have really loved, as I started my journey into virtual facilitation, I would have really loved to have that kind of a tool. So that's where the online engagement scorecard came from.
So, what are some of the categories, right? So here, for those who are online, let's see. This is what the assessment looks like, and you can take this assessment. It's free, right? To take this assessment.
100% free. Yeah.
16 questions. And so, what are some of the key categories or like the top one or two categories as you design this? I know there's quite a few in there, but what became the one or two categories? Oh, look at this.
Oh, so
By the way, this is a really cool tip here too for people who like sharing slides and don't want to slide. Just put them on a notepad, and you can actually put them up to the camera if you have the right camera, and it actually I think engages people more than an actual like sharing your slide. So, anyways,
I love this. I love
yes.
this. I think I learned I saw it done really effectively by a coach named Michael Bunjai Stainer. And
Ooh.
he was just pulling these things up. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great because you don't break the connection that you have with your group. And it's kind of like a just one of those low tech, kind of techniques that I think really, really work. So
Well, I think
anyway,
the other part that humanizes too, because like it's your handwriting, those type of things um, connect further, I think, than anything else you could do. So,
absolutely. And especially in a world where people in online sessions are usually dealt very long slide decks
uh,
of material,
uh,
slide after slide after
yeah,
slide. This is
yes.
really one of those ways that you can really break that kind of, you know, monotony,
We
let's
need
just
we
say.
need like slibophobia or like we need a funny new kind of
We
word
need a
for
new
it.
term. Yes.
Right. Anyway, so
Slidophobia.
you're
Like
you're
that.
saying these are the core some of the core pieces for your online engagement, right?
Yeah. So I've kind of identified these four elements:
Okay.
design, interaction, delivery, and tech.
Okay.
And it really, the skills, the capacities that I have seen that lead to a really engaging virtual session fall into one of these four categories. Now, this is
Mm.
a new scorecard, and just about 300 people have taken the scorecard to date, and some really interesting things are coming up. So people take the scorecard,
Yeah.
you answer a bunch of questions, so it's kind of like not giving the answers away, but like if, for example, one of the areas is design,
Yes.
so, for example, like a question might be, how much variety do you include? Like the chat, breakout, visuals to keep things fresh and engaging.
Mm-hmm.
And if another category is interaction, it's for example, like some of these nuanced things, like how often do moments of energy and laughter or insight naturally show up in your sessions? And that is really one of those, kind of online engagement skills of being able to transmit that through the screen. Just like I felt like when we joined the call, I could feel your energy coming streaming through, from Seattle to Toronto. And it's those kinds of nuanced things. No one ever told me that that was a skill that, that made my meetings more engaging. And yet, that is one of those kind of skills that bumps you from somebody who's, delivering a pretty reasonably good session to something that is really energizing and magical.
Yeah, magical. And I think that's really a key point. I think I want to share this quote with you, Gwen. So, in National Speakers Association, 2 years in influence, one of the Hall of Famers came around and it said this quote: Goosebumps don't lie, right? If you do get goosebumps during any meeting, whatever meeting you have, especially a virtual meeting, you should pay attention to that moment because that moment has something there that's very important, whether it's real emotion, it's authenticity, it's humor, it's whatever it is for you. Your body's telling you that, and I thought that's a really key important part. I'm just kind of curious. So you said you had goosebumps in this other meeting. I'm just curious. What do you remember another time that you got goosebumps during a virtual meeting?
Well, I led 5 cohorts of a course I called Breakthrough Facilitation, and it was a live cohort based course.
Yes.
that facilitators and trainers and coaches came to, and we learned, together basically all of the things around leading engaging virtual sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I focused a lot in that course on these breakthrough moments, or these moments like these aha moments, and how to create those kinds of moments in a virtual session. And one of the exercises that we did was an exercise called Your Story of Breakthrough. So when you present yourself to your group,
Mm-hmm.
sharing a breakthrough moment or a challenge, a struggle that you were having, a very specific breakthrough moment, and how you kind of emerged on the other side, and what has been possible now that you're on the other side. So it's
Oh.
just like a very simple, kind of 3-step storytelling tool framework that I like to use when I introduce myself. And this is that's what I was teaching the group. And this one participant came back, and we kind of sketched it out, then came back and shared our stories of breakthrough. And this one young woman from Indonesia shared her story of breakthrough. And it was one of the most moving things I had ever heard, period. And that was a definite goosebump moment, not only for me, but for the whole group that was listening to her. So storytelling is one of those things I think that can really bring that element of emotion and magic and connection, in virtual meetings.
Yeah, in one of the meetings I had actually in Texas, right, we use Patrick Lencioni's exercise, tell a challenging childhood story.
Mm.
And it sounds simple, but I retested it over pandemic, and it's like, wow, it's still that good. And in one program, a woman in Texas talked about, and first she opens with, I have never told this story publicly before. Now you know something's coming. And then she talked about how she escaped, I think it was an African country that had a revolution, and they were trying to get out. Like her dad was in the military, right? That they had a coup, and they were trying to get out safely, and they ran into rebels on the way out. And the rebels, of course, were saying, we have to take you in. We have to arrest you. And so the guy starts talking with them, and he ends up making a deal by giving them something so that he'll let him and his family pass, right?
Wow.
And she's never told the story. And we're like all of us in the room are like looking for two things. Number one is, why is this not your keynote? This is an amazing story. And the second one was, what did your dad do? And it turned out that he had an ornamental rifle, like, silver. It was ordained, had some parts or whatever. And he traded the rifle for safe passage for his family.
Wow.
Wow, and those are, I think, the moments that we get from this. So, I want to share a story around hybrid too. I know you and I talked a little bit of hybrid in the pre-show, and one of the things, since we talked about pioneering, it happened at the Gottman Institute. So, do you know John and Julie Gottman?
I know of them. Yeah, I don't know
Yes.
them personally. Yeah.
So their institute is here in Seattle, and they asked me to produce their hybrid conference for the first time last year. And one of the cool innovations that just emerged, right? There was no planning. It emerged, and what happened was they had some foreign speakers that were actually kind of difficult to understand because they had some thick accents. So I turned on captions in Zoom, and the captions actually were able to get them. They were able to read them actually pretty well. So the second part is, and this is a part where they do case studies, and it's meant around conversation. So everyone's pre-read the case study. There are two people who are moderating the conversation, but it's really a conversation around everybody. So they were on there, but there was also a part of the gallery was on there. And then the last thing that very few people have done is that I put the chat. I put the chat up because there were 130 people in person, but there were 180 around the world from places like France and Italy and Australia, right? All licensed therapists. And they're having this amazing discussion around the case study. And I didn't want, often the in-person people feel left out of that chat, which is so valuable.
Yeah.
So I put it on. And so this is the screen that is running. in the in person, and one of the few things that it started to do was that it bridged a connection between the in person and the virtual audiences. So they could actually see everything that was going on, both the conversations they were talking about and the things they were chatting about. And that was kind of one of the innovations. I'm just curious about what are you seeing in hybrid, or do you have any other examples? I think you also said, right, it's one of the most notoriously difficult areas to create these type of connections.
Yeah, 100%. And I know a lot of people who have just kind of given up on hybrid. So to tell you the truth, I'm one of those people who's like, I have some experience with it, but I felt like it's its own thing, and kudos to you for kind of figuring out some of these things that really work well in hybrid. I remember one hybrid meeting that I did in Madrid. And again, it was just kind of coming out of COVID. We were 25 people in the actual room because you couldn't really have more people than that in the same physical room. And the organizers wanted to open it up to a virtual audience. So we had 700 people chiming in from different parts of Spain, from Latin America. And I did this like experiential, it was a body rhythm on stage where we were doing this body rhythm together in the in-person room
Okay.
and inviting people to do the body rhythm in their remote places. Now, people were
Oh,
not on camera, but then we started seeing the comments coming through in the chat, and
okay.
people were loving this because it was so different than anything that they were even expecting to happen. And I learned that body rhythm from the mentors that I had at the organization I worked with, Charlie Murphy and Peggy Taylor, who are closer. They were closer to your part of the world. But I think there's a real trick to unlocking that hybrid because it's there's such different experiences, of people in the same room. If everybody's behind the screen, more or less they're having, they're kind of
Yes.
it's a level
Yeah.
playing field. If everybody's in the room, it's a level playing field. But what are some of your tips on like what is working for you in hybrid?
Well, first I got to quote our good friend Jan Keck, who I thought had one of the greatest hybrid quotes of all time, which is, "I believe hybrid might be the worst of both worlds." Right? In some ways, he was right. I had to think a lot about his quote when he said that. Right? I still think about that quote all the time. But I believe things that can happen in hybrid is a concept I called weaving. So what I talk about weaving is that there are times when we have a shared experience, right? So you come together, right? There's a presenter. That presenter is presenting to in-person and virtual at the same time. We're kind of having the same experience. And then there's the parts that don't make any sense to sometimes the other world. So this is the weaving is then you come out. So like during a break, one thing in the break is that we got to take care of biological needs and people take a break and people have one-on-one conversations. And none of that translates well to virtual at all, right?
Mhm.
Well, in person is having their experience. So what I do instead is one is that we have a dedicated virtual MC, which I think is one of the top tactics, right, to use or techniques to use is that you can have an in-person MC and a virtual MC, and you really need both because they're often doing different things and they have different focus. So
Yeah.
so the next thing that happens is during our breaks is that I often work with our speakers. Our speakers, after they sometimes talk to people in person, they will go sit down in a booth that we have and they can actually talk to virtual. And now
Amazing.
virtual is actually getting its own experience. And now virtual also is getting this indicator going, I'm actually getting time and content that in person is not getting.
Wow.
And so that really turns into an extraordinary experience. And our virtual audience has really thanked it. They just said, because that's what's happening in person. Quite a lot of times, the value is that you get a chance to. I'm going to ask you a question that I didn't want to ask you on stage, for
Yeah.
a variety of reasons. That, or we start to collaborate, or you talk about something else. And so the virtual audience starts to get that in a totally different fashion. And I think that's one of the parts. So that's weaving is one of my top pieces. The second one goes around the technology, which
Mhm.
is you really need the right technology and you have to train your presenters because a lot of even what I call a lot of Hall of Famers actually don't know what to do in a hybrid environment. They've been grown up on stage, so they know everything to do there. But
Yeah.
because hybrid's so new, they don't know. So we provide extra things like monitors with the gallery view all the time on.
Okay.
We provide chat in large format, like a 65-inch television, so you can read the chat from on stage.
Amazing.
Right, and then you also have your, presenter view or your PowerPoint slide. But those are some of the tips around there. Our tech also, we always have 4 cameras, and the most two important cameras are actually pointing back in the audience,
Yeah.
so that if somebody in the audience starts asking a question, it's amazing. Some of the even very expensive and high end or big budgeted programs don't have any cameras facing the audience, and I think you lose an important part of that experience of saying who's talking.
Yeah.
And what does the room look like? Because that's every virtual person. That's almost the number one thing on their mind, especially as the pandemic was over. Was what does the room look like?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
those are some
amazing.
of my top tips, and it does
Yeah.
take a system of collective things like this to really create an experience. Here, I'll share 2 stories though I think that are really cool. Number
Yeah.
one is we had a presenter, and he said he felt more connected to the virtual audience than the in-person audience
Wow.
because of the way we had the tech set up. um, he was getting more feedback from the virtual audience, and I thought that was astounding. The second one was you talked about hybrid and like this joined experience, like the body, drumming. My good friend Brian Walter once inspired me with a neon dance, and so this group had a neon theme for a hybrid. It's like 110 people in person and 700 virtual, all across the Western United States. So we created this neon dance. They actually physically mailed glow sticks to every attendee, and
That's
then you
awesome.
take a song and you teach people like 8 neon dance moves. So then everyone cracked these sticks. And so now we actually have 110 people in the room, but we have a screen of 50 people with their cameras on doing this glow stick dance and having a shared moment. And it was
That's
astounding.
awesome. Yeah. It is that kind of like that shared moments. Like how can you create those moments where people feel connected? The speaker to the virtual audience, to the in-person audience to the virtual audience, like all this web of connections. And it sounds like, just even that idea of the camera facing the audience, you know, in a way, there's a lot of things in what you said that make me think like how virtual has impacted the in-person experience, just as, we were kind of defaulting to the in-person experience. And I actually haven't done a lot of in-person sessions since the pandemic. I've focused 100% online.
Yeah.
But I've had some interesting conversations with people like Lex Narayan, from Stream Alive.
Oh yeah, Lux. Yeah.
Yeah, Lex, and how that started as an online, engagement software where you can visualize what's going on in the chat and it comes up in really cool things on the screen, and how they've used that in the in-person setting and in hybrid environments and stuff. So it's very interesting how these things, but one of the things also from Lux that, talk about just things that kind of stick in your mind, his whole thing is unmute the audience.
Yes.
Because so for so long, as you know, because you're deep into conferences were just listening to a speaker,
Yes.
and that was it. And there was so much, expertise and so much knowledge in the room that just went, it was just not tapped whatsoever. And so I hope, that maybe one of the things that comes as a result, like these longer term impacts, is that there is this much more focus on, like Lux says, unmuting the audience, making it like that more interactive.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Stream Alive for quite a while. Number one, I think that the genius too is there. It's actually easier to use Stream Alive online than it is in person.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's an important part, right? That actually almost no system I know does that. Like it's actually harder for you if you're online. And Lux is one of the very few says I want to make I made it easier. Even
Yeah.
if it's one or two steps easier, that's you have to reduce. This is I worked at Microsoft for a decade, so we called this lowering the bar. I actually thought Bill Gates was insane for doing Visual Basic, right? We just thought it was the dumbest idea when we were in college. And then it turned out he was right, and it actually quadrupled the number of Windows developers in the world by
Wow.
by what we call lowering the bar, making it easier to do
Yeah.
these things. And I think in Stream Alive, I just recently used it in an in-person program. So I was selected as the MC for the Olympic Peninsula Tourism Summit. And it was so great, Gwen, to listen to. This is a hard challenge I'm actually telling speakers now. I think the trend is heading this way. The feedback from last year's conference was less talking heads, more networking, more collaboration, more group work. And I was like, wow. So they didn't want a keynote speaker. They did really want a facilitator. And so, Gwen, I don't know if you have this strategy too, but I'd love to hear if you have a strategy around syntax, which is I started with Stream Alive, which is now everyone in the audience with a cell phone can participate this. And they did. They saw all these responses, right? A word cloud and then the Tetris blocks with all their ideas. And somebody came back and told me, she goes, oh, well, number one, I love a good app. And number two, right, I'm so glad that was like, and that happened in the first 5 minutes
Yeah.
saying, all right, I'm signaling to them, I'm not going to talk for 90 minutes. You're going to talk.
Yeah.
So the syntaxing was like that, and so we went from that to a partner exercise to a 2 minute silent exercise. You needed to write to yourself quietly while there's 2 minutes. So I was just trying to ensure that I hit multiple styles, and then eventually it got into a full blown 15-minute collaboration. And people don't recognize, but the strategy is syntax to do a little bit here in the beginning and work it to do more and more and more until people feel safe doing this much harder thing. So
Nice. I love that example. I love that example of, starting with the just really signaling, and it is a signal from the very beginning that you are not going to be the talking head and you are inviting people to actively participate. Because as soon as those first 5 minutes of any experience are mission critical to getting people engaged or not. I always think like there's this kind of thing that I call the early engagement effect. The earlier you get people engaged, the more likely it is that they will stay engaged throughout the
yeah,
session.
agree.
If they're silent for that first 5, 10, 15 minutes, they are, receiving the message that they're not engaging, And so when you
Yeah.
hit that 15-minute mark, oh, any questions? No one says a word. The problem started, 15 minutes
15 minutes
ago.
ago. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and probably even before then. So I love that idea of like really flipping that around. And I think I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about this, is these learning formats, or these kind of, whether you call them conference formats or
Yeah.
workshop formats, or I'm seeing also things shifting towards, again, like you said, people are not as interested in just talking heads, pure content delivery. They want more interactive experiences. And with AI, I feel like this whole focus on content delivery is now like, moving way out of style very quickly.
Mm.
And we're moving right into things that I'm sure I know because I've read your book and I know what you're all about. People like us who have been experimenting with these way more interactive ways. So, for example, a hot seat,
Yes.
where somebody
Oh yeah.
brings their real life, problems,
Yes.
and you have like a group kind of session to help that person really move through the challenge that they're facing. Or live teaching,
Yes.
real concrete problems. Let's work through these like together, and come
Matt,
up with something that's valuable and actually like practical that you can use straight away after the session.
yeah, masterminds are on the hot list here too because I think it's because the audience also, if you're maybe you're starting to see too that number one, when you get the right audience, that's actually a big part now of a lot of conferences is trying to get the right people in the room and then
Hmm.
the right culture of those people in the room. So like I'm part of a high-end mastermind and they did do something really right, which is even though they're all CEOs of revenues of they're supposed to have at least revenues of 10 million or more, every single person who's been part of this mastermind comes in with an open mind and the ability and desire to want to talk to anybody who walks in the room. And that is an important part of the culture that that default did not happen before. Before it said I was exclusive or I'm the CEO or blah blah blah. And by joining all these like people and having this culture around it, I think it's really made it better in that way. And so people have said that it's something very very unique. And I think that then you get into there's so much knowledge in the room. Then your job is to tap it, not to be
Yeah,
the expert. That you got to be the expert in learning how to draw that knowledge out in a meaningful way that makes a difference to somebody's life.
100%. Yeah. And
Amen. Right? We're preaching.
Amen. And it's also, and this is where I think you're right on with this idea that, and sometimes this is quite an invisible role, that role of the virtual host, in
Yes.
your conferences, and the in-person host, and that we know that these things are like people are starting, it's not the first time that anyone said, oh, draw out the wisdom of the group, and people are starting to kind of clue into that a lot more, I feel like. But what we don't realize sometimes is that it's actually there is a person who is this kind of invisible hand in the process, or can look like an invisible hand, who's asking the right questions, who's pulling out the patterns that are coming up, who is balancing the voices so that those people who normally wouldn't speak
Yes.
all of a sudden feel comfortable about coming forward with their ideas. So it's very I'm glad that you named that virtual host figure, because that is, again, I think one of these linchpins to designing really engaging virtual sessions.
Well, you'll love this part, which was during that tourism summit, somebody came up with an introvert's itinerary. And there was so much energy in the room that was so amazing. They're saying like this itinerary specifically designed for introverted people. What they found out too is that somebody chimed in and said that the quietest spot in Washington State is in the Olympic National Park. They actually measured it with like an ultra sensitive microphone, and they could actually create an introvert. You could hike in and spend an hour there quietly with a group and make that a feature. So I thought that was an interesting piece with that. Speaking of
Yeah.
interesting, we're to the stage of this interview known as the speed round. The speed round is that I have actually been writing questions for you while this interview has been going on. I'm going to ask them to you if you're okay with it and see if you can answer them quickly, and then I'll play some ridiculous noise like this one. Are you open to
Okay.
this, Gwen?
I am. And the caveat, I am not one of those people who like, sometimes when you're hit with that question, these prompt questions and like virtual trainings and stuff, oh, one thing that, I often have to like think about it a little bit more, but let's go. Let's go for the.
Remember, you can. Okay, so then one of my rules in all of my meetings too is you can pass, Gwen. So if
Okay.
you like, it doesn't
No,
come, you
this is
just
a
say
good
pass.
challenge.
I'm going
This
to
is a
move
good
on.
challenge.
Okay. All right. First question. Most energetic MC besides me.
I would say um, there, let's just have a think about this for 1 second. I would say energetic. Um, there is a woman who is a fabulous facilitator. Her name is Jenny Sauerklein. I've learned so much about, facilitation, and it's an energy that is very inviting to people in
Oh,
her session. So I wouldn't categorize her as like somebody who's like,
rah
high,
rah.
high energy, but it's an energy that unlocks a lot of things in her virtual sessions.
Genius. I gotta meet this person. One of your most engaging virtual meetings.
Um,
You have so many to choose from.
Gosh, I'm scanning through right now. My mind is scanning through. I would say it was one um with a virtual it's another virtual facilitation outfit that I led a training that was on facilitating breakthroughs. So something
Mm,
that, we don't talk about all that much. And it's something, that I'm very deeply kind of curious about. How do you spark breakthroughs in virtual environments? And it was one of those trainings that I felt walking away from. I was like, people in the chat like, oh, I experienced this breakthrough and that breakthrough and this breakthrough. And that for me was really it just felt like one of those sessions that you walk away, you're like, that clicked.
ooh,
So I love that.
genius. Um, okay, best training you've ever attended.
In person and
Yeah,
virtual.
whatever.
Best training I have attended was my very first facilitation training. This would have been about 25 years ago. And
Oh,
it is what opened my eyes to this whole world of facilitation that I did not even know existed. It was
whoa.
called Creative Facilitation. It was led by one of who became one of my facilitation mentors, a man by the name of Charlie Murphy. He is no longer with us, but he
Hmm.
made a huge impact on so many people who, like myself, kind of it opened a whole world that we didn't even know existed. So, creative facilitation with Charlie Murphy.
Genius. Dynamic. Why is multicultural important to you?
That is a very good question. I I know from experience there is so much richness that comes from being able to learn from different cultures, different contexts, different reality to one's own. And that comes through. I've always been interested in reading books that are written from authors from different cultures and countries, and that kind of thing, to my lived experience in a bicultural family, and having grown up in a city like Toronto.
It's a
Toronto
multinational
is
city. Yeah.
is a multicultural city, and it's it's got its pros, it's got its strengths and its weaknesses, and lots of different experiences in one city. But that for me is what makes it so. It's such a unique city, and it definitely has influenced just the way that I look at and I experience and I live in the world.
Genius. I always tell people, right, the best thing you can do for your kids is take them to another country. Uh, okay, a facilitation technique you can share.
Okay, so one that you may not have heard of, this one: ask, then tell.
Ooh, say more.
So this is a facilitation technique that I use a lot, and it is one of those techniques that makes content more engaging and relevant to your audience. So it's very simple. Before you launch into content, you ask a question first of your audience, you survey the audience, you could do a poll, you can ask them things like, how comfortable are you with this topic? What are the biggest challenges that you face? Have some answers in the chat, and then you jump off of what your participants say and bring it into your content. So
Ooh.
it's the principle of ask, then tell.
Oh, I love it. I thought the other version around it too is now when I ask questions, I'll tell people I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question, then I'll ask the question too, and then I'll tell them I'm going to tell a little version of my answer to this to give you time to think about your answer. All
Hey,
right.
we should have done that in this round. I would love to have heard your answers to all of those questions.
Okay, let's see. I got three more for you. Okay, three more. A virtual host that you appreciate that's neither you or I.
Um, let's. I'm going to say Saeed Sadouk. Do you know who
Oh.
Saeed is?
I'm following him, but I have not yet met him, either virtual or in person yet. So,
Oh, you need to meet Saeed. And one of the things that I so appreciate about Saeed, he's a virtual. He calls himself a facilitator. Um,
oh, that's good. I have not heard that yet.
And that's one of the things I really appreciate about Saeed. He's hilarious. He brings so much humor into the work that he does. He comes up with all these like really funny like memes about things and just really insightful, and again, like if my mission is to bring the joy back into working and learning online together, Saeed is somebody who does that for me.
All right. Well, I learned this from another virtual MC that was out there, but I learned how to use memes and GIFs into the meetings that I had. That's right. That's great. Yeah. So this is a call out. Say this is for you. This is your personal invitation to get on my podcast so we can find a time to meet each other. Okay. Last question. What's your wish for the world in this year, 2026?
2026. My wish for the world is to find ways to connect to each other.
Hmm.
And that could be in person, that could be virtual, but I feel like there is so much in this world that is, this crazy world where there's a lot of worrying things happening. The antidote to that, in my view and in my experience, is to actively seek out connection. And connection could be with, people who don't have the same viewpoint as you, but
Yeah.
connecting in a way that you are, fully like present and listening to the other person who you're with. And so I just feel like that is really the antidote to all the rest of the stuff, that's going on these days.
You would love this. There's a Seattle diversity trainer, and he wrote a book called The Anatomy of Hate. And it was the story of 10 people who used to be members of hate groups who rescinded those hate groups. And all 10 had this one factor in common, and that was they made a friend in the group they used to hate.
That's incredible.
So that
Yeah.
talking about making that connection. So if you can make that connection, you might actually be able to solve challenges with that. So, Gwyn, thank you so much for your time here, and I look forward to. We may have the opportunity to see each other in December in beautiful Toronto. So I look forward to that opportunity, and we'll record podcast number 3 live and in person. We won't know what to do, but we're going to do it anyways. Gwyn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, John. This is such a pleasure. It's really always great and learn so much talking to you.
Thanks, Gwyn. Oh my goodness. So yes, we've been talking with Gwyn Wansbrough, and she was just saying, make a connection. What do you have to do today to make a connection to somebody? Think about calling, texting somebody who you haven't connected with in a while. Maybe that's one of them. Or think about who's somebody new that you want to connect with. Speaking of new connections, You can make new connections here with me if you subscribe, share, like, and comment here on social media. You can also connect to all of our past episodes, engagingvirtualmeetings.online. A new episode releases every Wednesday. And if you want to make new connections, part of the networking is part of this engaging retreat. This is my retreat every year. This year is October 20 through 22nd. You can even scan for a free ticket. Most of all, if you want to be like Gwyn, then all you got to do is go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, select interview, and you, like you, Said, could be the next guest here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. Hey, we'll see you next time.
Don't we start people and keep